Right now, someone your age just got promoted.
Someone your age just got engaged.
Someone your age just bought a house.
And you're sitting here wondering what's wrong with you. Here's the truth. There is nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with the way your brain is measuring your life.
In the next 20 minutes, you'll learn exactly why this feeling of being behind is one of the most convincing lies your mind will ever tell you, and how to permanently break its grip on you.
Chapter 1. The Comparison Trap.
Your brain didn't evolve to scroll through a feed of 400 million people's best moments. It evolved to compare you to about 150 people in your tribe. That's it. That's the whole comparison budget your brain was built for. Now imagine handing that same ancient system an infinite highlight reel of strangers, acquaintances, and old classmates updated every 6 seconds. Of course it breaks. Psychologists call this social comparison theory. And here's the part nobody tells you. Your brain doesn't compare you to reality. It compares you to whatever sample it's been shown most recently. Scroll through wedding photos for 10 minutes, and suddenly your entire relationship feels inadequate. Scroll through career wins, and your job feels small. This isn't a character flaw. It's a sampling error. I should be further along by now. That thought feels like truth, but it's actually a statistic built from a broken sample size. Your brain sees 50 success stories in a row and assumes that's the average. It's not the average. It's the tail end of the distribution, curated and uploaded because it's exciting.
We've all done it. Close the laptop after a birthday post, feeling somehow worse about our own life, even though nothing in our life actually changed in the last 10 minutes.
Nothing was lost. Only the number in your head shifted. And that number was never accurate to begin with. Chapter 2. The Myth of the Timeline. Graduate by 22. Career by 25. Married by 28. House by 30. Where did this timeline actually come from? Not biology, not psychology, mostly economics from decades ago, when one income could buy a house, when career paths were linear, when most people lived in the same town their whole life. That timeline was built for a world that doesn't exist anymore, and yet somehow it still runs in the back of your head like a countdown clock. I'm supposed to have this figured out by now. Says who? The honest answer is nobody agreed to this. You inherited it, the same way you inherited a language you never chose to speak. Once you see that the timeline was manufactured, not discovered, it loses its authority over you. The people who look like they hit every milestone on time are often the ones who tell researchers they feel the least prepared for what came next. Getting somewhere on schedule and being ready for it are two completely different things. The timeline only measures the first one. Remember panicking on your birthday, doing quiet math about where you were supposed to be versus where you actually are? That math was never based on your life. It was based on someone else's imaginary spreadsheet. Chapter 3. The Highlight Reel Effect. Nobody posts their Tuesday. Nobody posts the argument, the rejection email, the 3 hours spent staring at a ceiling, wondering what they're doing with their life. What gets posted is the exception, dressed up as the rule. I'm the only one struggling right now? Researchers who study social media use consistently find the same pattern. The more curated content someone consumes, the more they underestimate how much everyone else is also struggling, quietly, off camera. Think about your own feed for a second. When was the last time you posted your worst day? Now realize that every single person whose life looks effortless is doing exactly what you do.
hiding the worst day and posting the best 5 minutes of the month.
We've all sat there, comparing our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, then wondered why the math never adds up. It never adds up because you're not comparing two full pictures. You're comparing a full picture to a poster. Chapter 4. Relative versus absolute progress. This is the part with the actual broken math. The part I promised you earlier. Here it is. When you compare yourself to someone else, you're not comparing progress. You're comparing two completely different starting points, resources, timelines, and definitions of success, and pretending the comparison is fair. They started their business at 23. I haven't started anything at 27. Maybe they had savings. Maybe they had a mentor. Maybe they failed twice already in ways you never saw. Comparing your Chapter 3 to someone else's Chapter 20 isn't discouraging because you're behind. It's discouraging because you're reading two different books and calling it the same story. The only honest comparison is you against your own baseline. Where were you a year ago? What can you do now that you couldn't do then? That's the only measurement your brain can actually use accurately, because it's the only one built on real information instead of a stranger's edited highlight reel. We've all caught ourselves doing the math on someone else's timeline, forgetting we don't even know what chapter they're actually on. Chapter 5. The cost of chasing someone else's timeline. Here's what actually happens when you spend years running someone else's race. You start making decisions out of fear instead of desire. You take the job because everyone your age has a job like that, not because you want it. You rush the relationship because the timeline says you should, not because you're ready. And these decisions, made under invisible pressure, tend to compound into a life that looks right from the outside and feels wrong from the inside. I have to catch up. That sentence sounds motivating, but it's actually one of the most expensive thoughts you can think, because catching up to an imaginary finish line means spending your actual life reacting to a race nobody else is running either. This is the quiet tragedy researchers keep finding in people in their 30s and 40s. Not that they failed, that they succeeded at goals they never actually chose, because the timeline chose for them. We've all made a decision under that pressure. The relationship, the job, the move, and felt the specific exhaustion of achieving something you didn't even want. Chapter 6. Building your own metric. If the timeline is manufactured and the comparison is broken, what do you actually measure instead? Here's the tool. Write down what winning your year would actually look like to you, specifically, not what would impress anyone else.
I don't know what I actually want, only what I'm supposed to want.
Start small. One metric. Maybe it's peace at home. Maybe it's finishing one hard thing. Maybe it's simply not living in comparison mode for a whole month. Once you have your own metric, something strange happens. Other people's milestones stop feeling like a threat because you're no longer playing their game. A stranger's promotion has nothing to do with your goal of finishing your degree at your own pace. The two things were never actually connected. You just linked them in your head. We've all built a life around impressing people who, if we're honest, weren't even paying that much attention. Chapter 7. The compound effect of ignoring comparison. Every time you catch a comparison thought and choose your own metric instead, you're not just feeling better in that moment. You're changing the direction of decades. This'll only take a minute. I'll catch up later. That's how most comparison spirals start, one scroll at a time. And it's also exactly how the fix works, one redirect at a time. Think about compound interest. Small deposits, repeated consistently, become massive over time. The same is true here. Every time you choose your own pace over someone else's timeline, you're making a deposit into a version of your life that's actually yours.
We've all had the version of ourselves that scrolled for 20 extra minutes out of anxiety. Now imagine that same 20 minutes redirected week after week into your own goal instead. That's not a small difference. That's a different decade.
Chapter 8. The Truth About the Finish Line.
There is no finish line everyone is running toward. There's no judge holding a stopwatch on your life. The timeline you've been measuring yourself against was built by no one in particular, agreed to by no one specific, and yet somehow it's been running the show. It doesn't have to anymore. I'm behind. Replace it with this. I'm on a timeline nobody else can see, built from information nobody else has, moving at a pace that fits an actual, specific, real life. Mine. You are not behind. You were never in that race to begin with. The moment you stop measuring your life against a stranger's highlight reel is the moment your actual life gets to start counting. Start today. Pick one comparison thought that shows up this week. Catch it. Ask what your own metric says instead. That single redirect is where this actually begins.